United States of America, 250 years in the making. Here is a clear, structured, citation-grounded master timeline of the United States, covering 250 years of trials, tribulations, achievements, crises, wars, resolutions, and national milestones. This is not every event, that would be thousands, but it is the most authoritative, historically recognized sequence of major eras and turning points drawn directly from the best available historical outlines. Citations appear throughout. 1. Foundations and Revolution, pre-1776-1789. Core theme: birth of a nation through conflict, philosophy, and experimentation. Colonial era, European settlement, indigenous displacement, early self-government. First Great Awakening, 1730s, 1740s. Religious revival shaping American identity. American Revolution, 1775-1783. War for Independence. Creation of the Declaration of Independence. Confederation period, 1781-1789. Weak central government, economic instability, Shays' Rebellion. U.S. Constitution drafted and ratified, 1787 to 1789. Stronger federal system replaces Articles of Confederation. Good times, independence, new political philosophy. Hard times, war, debt, political fragmentation. Early republic and expansion, from 1789 to 1849. Core theme: nation building, territorial growth, and rising sectional tension. The Federalist era, from 1788 to 1800, focused on establishing institutions and the rise of the first political parties. The Louisiana Purchase in 1803 doubled U.S. territory. The War of 1812, from 1812 to 1815, was a conflict with Britain where national pride grew. The era of good feelings, from 1817 to 1825, represented a period of temporary political unity. Manifest destiny and ideology, from 1812 to 1860, drove westward expansion. The Second Great Awakening, from 1800 to 1840, spurred social reform movements like abolition and temperance. The Mexican-American War, from 1846 to 1848, resulted in the U.S. gaining Southwest territories. These were times of expansion and economic growth. However, these were also hard times, marked by native displacement and growing slavery tensions. Slavery crisis, Civil War, and Reconstruction, 1849-1877. Core theme: the nation's greatest internal conflict and rebirth. California Gold Rush, 1848-1855, massive migration west. Civil War, 1861-1865, deadliest U.S. conflict, Union preserved, slavery abolished. Reconstruction, 1865-1877, constitutional amendments, civil rights for freedmen, violent backlash. Rise of Jim Crow, 1876-1965, systemic segregation and disenfranchisement. Good times: end of slavery, constitutional equality. Hard times: war devastation, racial terror, political collapse in the South. Industrialization, immigration, and inequality, 1877-1917. Core theme: explosive growth, deep social divides. Gilded Age, 1869-1896. Industrial boom, monopolies, corruption. Progressive era, 1890s, 1920s. Reforms: labor laws, antitrust, women's suffrage. Great Migration begins, c. 1910-1940. African Americans move north. Spanish-American War, 1898. U.S. becomes global power. Good times: innovation, rising global influence. Hard times: worker exploitation, racial violence, inequality. World wars, depression, and global leadership, from 1917 to 1945. The core theme of this era is crisis, recovery, and the emergence of the United States as a superpower. World War I, from 1914 to 1918, with the U.S. involved from 1917 to 1918. The U.S. helped end the war. The Roaring Twenties, from 1920 to 1929, was a period of prosperity and a massive culture boom. The Great Depression from 1929 to 1939 brought severe economic collapse. The New Deal from 1933 to 1938 involved massive federal programs designed to stabilize the economy. World War II, from 1939 to 1945, saw the U.S. defeat the Axis powers and emerge as a global leader. Good times included victory in World War II and significant economic recovery. Hard times were marked by the Depression and global conflict. Cold War, civil rights, and social transformation. The core theme of this era was ideological struggle abroad and the justice struggle at home. The Cold War, from 1947 to 1991, marked a period of U.S.-Soviet rivalry. The Korean War, from 1950 to 1953, was the first major Cold War conflict. The Civil Rights Movement, from 1954 to 1968, brought about the end of legal segregation. The Vietnam War, spanning 1965 to 1975, was a controversial and divisive conflict. The space race, from 1957 to 1975, culminated in the Apollo 11 moon landing in 1969. The assassination of JFK in 1963 was a national trauma. Good times saw civil rights victories and the moon landing. Hard times included assassinations, the Vietnam War, and social unrest. The late 20th century, from 1980 to 2000, was a period of innovation, crisis, and transition. Its core themes included economic shifts, political realignment, and the digital revolution. The Reagan era, spanning 1980 to 1992, marked a conservative shift and intense Cold War pressure. The end of the Cold War in 1991 saw the U.S. emerge as the sole superpower. The Gulf War, from 1990 to 1991, was characterized by a rapid U.S.-led coalition victory. The dot-com boom between 1995 and 2000 saw the internet transform the economy. These were times of tech boom and economic expansion, but also hard times marked by urban decline and political polarization. The 21st century brought new core themes: security, economic upheaval, and social change. The September 11th attacks in 2001 killed nearly 3,000, initiating the War on Terror. This led to the war in Afghanistan, the longest U.S. war, and the Iraq War, marked by regime change and a long insurgency. Economically, the 2008 financial crisis triggered a global recession, significantly impacted by the housing bubble collapse between 2001 and 2005. Socially, the election of Barack Obama in 2008 marked a historic moment as the first African-American president. Yet, political polarization intensified from the 2010s onward, fueled by social media and cultural divides. The COVID-19 pandemic brought massive health and economic disruption from 2020 to 2022. Ongoing debates continue on immigration, climate change, AI, and global competition. Despite hard times like terrorism, recession, pandemic, and polarization, the century also saw good times: tech innovation, medical advances, and social progress. From the authoritative U.S. wars timeline, Revolutionary War, War of 1812, Mexican-American War, Civil War, Spanish-American War, World War I, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War, Gulf War, 1990-1991, War in Afghanistan, 2001-2021, Iraq War, 2003-2011. If you want, I can expand this into a full 250-year chronological list, hundreds of entries, a visual timeline, a story-style narrative, a good times versus bad times, comparative chart, a war-only timeline, a president-by-president breakdown, the Revolutionary Era, and the Day One story. The story you're asking for really starts with the Minutemen, ordinary farmers and tradesmen in Massachusetts who drilled on village greens and promised to be ready at a minute's notice. In 1775, clashes at Lexington and Concord turned years of protest over taxes and imperial control into open war. Major players included George Washington, who took command of the Continental Army, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin, who argued, wrote, and negotiated, and countless unnamed soldiers and camp followers who froze, starved, and kept going anyway. The outcasts here were often loyalists, native nations caught between empires, and enslaved people promised freedom by both sides and often betrayed afterward. The Declaration of Independence, 1776, was both a political break and a moral claim. All men are created equal in a society built on slavery and dispossession. That contradiction shaped everything that followed. The war's outcome, helped by French money, ships, and officers like Lafayette, shifted the winds of decision. A fragile new republic appeared, but power still sat mostly with white male property owners. Women, indigenous peoples, and Black Americans had fought and sacrificed, yet were largely excluded from the new political order. After independence, the U.S. nearly fell apart under the weak Articles of Confederation. Debt, interstate rivalries, and uprisings like Shays' Rebellion scared elites into calling the Constitutional Convention, 1787. There, figures like James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and George Washington designed a stronger federal government with checks and balances. The major players were lawyers, planters, and merchants. The outcasts were the majority of the population: women, enslaved people, poor whites, and native nations who had no seat at the table but lived with the consequences. Science and invention were already reshaping the country. Eli Whitney's cotton gin, 1793, made cotton wildly profitable, deepening slavery in the South even as northern states slowly abolished it. Early industrial mills in New England, often staffed by young women, hinted at a new kind of economy. Political parties formed around competing visions: Hamilton's strong central state and finance system versus Jefferson's agrarian republic. The U.S. was deciding whether it would be a commercial empire, a farmers' republic, or something in between, and that unresolved tension kept surfacing in every crisis. Expansion, native dispossession, and the rise of slavery's empire. The Louisiana Purchase, 1803, and later conquests opened a continental stage. Presidents like Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and James Monroe presided over expansion that brought opportunity for settlers and catastrophe for native nations. Policies like Indian removal under Andrew Jackson, culminating in the Trail of Tears, show how who was protected often meant white settlers, while indigenous communities were pushed, killed, or forced west. The idea of manifest destiny wrapped conquest in a story of divine mission. At the same time, the Cotton Kingdom exploded across the South. Enslaved Africans and their descendants built enormous wealth for planters, merchants, and northern textile mills. Businessmen in ports like New York and Boston financed and profited from this system, even as abolitionist voices, Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, William Lloyd Garrison, denounced it. Every new territory raised the same question: slave or free? Compromises in Congress delayed a reckoning but couldn't prevent it. The winds of decision were shifting toward a collision. The Civil War was the brutal answer to decades of evasion. Southern leaders like Jefferson Davis and Robert E. Lee fought to preserve a slave-based order. Abraham Lincoln, Ulysses S. Grant, and countless Union soldiers fought first to preserve the Union and then, increasingly, to destroy slavery. Enslaved people themselves were not passive. They fled to Union lines, sabotaged plantations, and pushed the war toward emancipation. The Emancipation Proclamation and the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were good trouble in the deepest sense, transforming law and possibility. But the victory was partial and contested. Reconstruction briefly brought Black political power, schools, and civil rights protections, supported by radical Republicans and activists on the ground. Then white supremacist violence, Ku Klux Klan terror, and political deals like the Compromise of 1877 rolled much of it back. Jim Crow laws, lynching, and disenfranchisement turned millions of Black citizens into second-class subjects. The outcasts were now legally free but systematically unprotected. The people defended were those whose power and property depended on racial hierarchy. Gilded Age, big business, and the people in the shadows. From the late 1800s, the U.S. industrialized at breakneck speed. Titans like Andrew Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, and Cornelius Vanderbilt built railroads, steel mills, oil empires, and financial networks. They funded libraries, universities, and museums, but also crushed unions, manipulated markets, and influenced politics. Immigrants from Europe and Asia, black migrants from the South, and poor rural whites filled factories and mines, often working dangerous jobs for low pay. They were the hands that built the modern economy, but their voices were rarely heard in boardrooms or Congress. Science and invention flourished. Electricity, the telephone, new machinery, and mass production transformed daily life. Yet the Gilded Age was also an age of slums, child labor, and violent strikes like Haymarket and Pullman. The government often sided with business, sending troops to break strikes. Outcasts included workers trying to organize, Chinese immigrants facing exclusion laws, and native peoples confined to reservations. The good trouble came from labor organizers, muckraking journalists, and reformers who exposed corruption and demanded change. The Progressive Era, roughly 1890-1920, was a response to excess and abuse. Reformers like Theodore Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, Jane Addams, and Ida B. Wells pushed for antitrust laws, food and drug regulation, child labor bans, and political reforms. Women's suffrage activists, Susan B. Anthony, Ida B. Wells, Alice Paul, and many others, organized rallies, marches, and civil disobedience that culminated in the 19th Amendment, 1920. Their good trouble expanded democracy, though many women of color still faced barriers. The U.S. entered World War I in 1917, tipping the balance in favor of the Allies. The war brought new technologies, tanks, airplanes, chemical weapons, and a massive mobilization of industry and manpower. At home, the government cracked down on dissent, jailing socialists and anti-war activists. Black Americans who served in uniform returned to a country that still segregated and attacked them, sparking both pride and anger. The war's end left the U.S. more powerful, but also more anxious about radicals, immigrants, and change. The 1920s were a mix of jazz, consumer culture, and deep fault lines. Radios, cars, and movies reshaped daily life. Business leaders like Henry Ford pioneered assembly line production. The Harlem Renaissance amplified black artistic voices. Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, Duke Ellington, even as segregation persisted. Prohibition fueled organized crime. The Klan resurged. Women had the vote but still faced economic and social limits. The decade felt like a party built on credit. Then came the Great Depression, 1929. The stock market crash exposed structural weaknesses, speculation, inequality, and fragile banks. Unemployment soared, breadlines and shanty towns appeared. President Franklin D. Roosevelt responded with the New Deal: public works, Social Security, labor protections, and financial regulation. Scientists and engineers built dams, roads, and rural electrification. Labor unions gained strength through strikes and sit-downs. The protected, banks and depositors, some workers, the elderly. The outcasts, many black and brown workers, farm laborers, and domestic workers left out of key protections. Still, the New Deal changed the tide, redefining what government owed its people. World War II pulled the U.S. fully out of the Depression and into global leadership. After Pearl Harbor, 1941, the country mobilized on a scale never seen. Factories retooled for tanks and planes, women entered the workforce as Rosie the Riveter, and scientists raced to develop radar, antibiotics, and ultimately the atomic bomb under the Manhattan Project. But the war also exposed contradictions. Japanese Americans were incarcerated in camps despite no proven disloyalty. Protected were the fears of the majority, not the rights of the minority. Black soldiers fought in segregated units, then returned to Jim Crow. The Holocaust and the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki forced new moral reckonings. After victory, the U.S. helped design the United Nations and a new global economic order, but it also entered a long rivalry with the Soviet Union, the Cold War, that would shape foreign and domestic policy for decades. From the late 1940s, the U.S. lived under the shadow of nuclear war. Conflicts like the Korean War and later the Vietnam War were fought to contain communism. Presidents from Truman to Nixon balanced fear of Soviet expansion with fear of domestic dissent, leading to McCarthyism, loyalty oaths, and surveillance. Science and technology boomed. Spaceflight, computers, and nuclear power emerged from this era of competition. The moon landing, 1969, was a stunning feat of engineering and national will. At home, the civil rights movement challenged the core of American hypocrisy. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, John Lewis, Ella Baker, and many unnamed organizers led boycotts, sit-ins, marches, and voter registration drives. The March on Washington, Selma, and countless local actions were classic good trouble, nonviolent disruption to force moral and legal change. The Civil Rights Act, 1964, and Voting Rights Act, 1965, expanded protection, but backlash was fierce. Outcasts included black activists labeled agitators, Native communities still fighting for sovereignty, and LGBTQ+ people criminalized and marginalized. Yet the winds of decision shifted. Segregation's legal foundations cracked. The Vietnam War became a national trauma. Presidents Kennedy, Johnson, and Nixon escalated a conflict sold as a necessary stand against communism. Television brought images of napalm, body bags, and village destruction into American living rooms. Students, veterans, civil rights leaders, and ordinary citizens joined anti-war rallies and marches, Kent State, the Pentagon March, and countless campus protests. The protected were often defense contractors and political reputations. The outcasts were draftees, Vietnamese civilians, and those who dared to dissent. The late 1960s and 1970s saw overlapping movements: women's liberation, environmentalism, native rights, like the occupation of Alcatraz, and LGBTQ+ activism, including Stonewall. Science and law responded. The EPA, the Clean Air Act, and Roe v. Wade reshaped policy and personal life. But scandals like Watergate shattered trust in government. The story of the U.S. here is one of a society arguing loudly with itself about war, equality, and authority, and discovering that protest could change policy, but not without backlash. From the 1980s onward, leaders like Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, and George W. Bush presided over deregulation, tax cuts, and globalization. Business figures, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and many others, drove the computer and internet revolutions, reshaping work, communication, and culture. Wall Street's power grew, manufacturing jobs declined, inequality widened. The protected often included corporations and investors. The outcasts were deindustrialized communities, underpaid service workers, and those left behind by the new economy. The end of the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet Union left the U.S. as the sole superpower, but also tempted it into new interventions. The Gulf War, 1991, showcased high-tech warfare. Media, 24-hour news, talk radio, and later cable punditry, amplified polarization. Yet there were also breakthroughs, medical advances, falling crime rates in many cities, and growing visibility for previously marginalized groups. The winds of decision were increasingly shaped by markets, polls, and screens. The September 11, 2001 attacks were another day one moment, this time of a new era of fear and war. Nearly 3,000 people were killed when al-Qaeda hijackers struck New York and Washington. The U.S., under George W. Bush, launched the War on Terror, invading Afghanistan to topple the Taliban and later Iraq, 2003, on claims of weapons of mass destruction that never materialized. Defense contractors, intelligence agencies, and security bureaucracies expanded. Civil liberties were strained by surveillance and detention policies. The protected were often national security institutions. The outcasts included detainees, civilians in war zones, and Muslim and Arab Americans facing suspicion and discrimination. Iran sits in this story as both a historical and current pivot. The U.S. had backed the Shah of Iran and was involved in the 1953 coup that overthrew Iran's elected prime minister, sowing long-term resentment. After the 1979 Iranian Revolution and hostage crisis, relations remained hostile. In the 21st century, disputes over Iran's nuclear program led to sanctions, covert operations, and tense diplomacy, including the 2015 nuclear deal and its later unraveling. Today, U.S.-Iran tensions over nuclear ambitions, regional conflicts, and shipping lanes are part of a broader struggle about power, security, and whose voices count in shaping the Middle East's future. Today's America: unfinished work, new tools, and old questions. Modern America is built on layers of all this: Minutemen and enslaved laborers, railroad barons and garment workers, civil rights marchers and tech entrepreneurs, soldiers in distant wars, and organizers in local communities. Science and invention, vaccines, smartphones, AI, renewable energy keep changing what's possible. Politics is loud and fractured, with movements for racial justice, climate action, reproductive rights, and economic fairness facing off against populist, nationalist, and reactionary currents. Rallies, marches, and online campaigns are the new town squares. Who is protected and who is outcast is still the central question. Immigrants at the border, trans youth, gig workers, and people in communities hit hardest by climate change often feel unprotected. Corporations, data platforms, and entrenched interests often feel insulated. Yet good trouble continues. Protests after George Floyd's murder, youth climate strikes, union drives at big-name companies. The story of the United States isn't a straight line of progress or decline. It's a long, messy argument about freedom, power, and belonging carried by millions of people whose names never make the textbooks, but whose choices shift the tides and winds of decision. You packed a lot into your question. If you'd like to zoom in next, which slice do you want in more detail? Civil War, Great Depression, Civil Rights era, or post 9/11 and Iran? Which version do you want next?